Thanks for tuning in to the Football Talk Squadron. I'm Dutch, and this is week 14 of the NFL season. Maul and Pops are out today, so it's just a solo episode for me. We'll make it quick and dirty for those of you listening out there, but we'll start off with the Packers and Lions tonight, Thursday. Detroit's -3. Taking a look, this is a huge game for both teams. Still has the competition of the Packers getting back into the division crown. The Lions are sitting there. Not only are the Lions 11-1 and really trying to put away the division with tonight's game, they're also trying to keep that number one seed in Detroit. I can't emphasize it's very similar to Kansas City's advantage when they are home. You don't want to go to Detroit. Detroit has not ever seen a team go to a Super Bowl. They traveled extremely well last year to San Francisco, and before that, when they played the Rams, when they played the Buccaneers in the playoffs, both of those games were absolutely electric. For the Lions, if they can control home field advantage throughout the playoffs, I don't want to say it guarantees a Super Bowl, but I think whoever comes in there to play them will have to play their A game due to how loud Detroit will be for that. So tonight's game is paramount for both teams. When you sit back and you look at how both teams have played, the biggest question going into tonight is, can the Packers offense expose a Lions secondary that at times has been flawed, especially in the penalty category? You look at Terry and Arnold. He has drawn numerous flags as a rookie this season. On the opposite side of the ball, can the Packers stop the run? That has been the Lions' Achilles heel at times this season, only in one game, which was against here's your trivia question. Who did the Lions lose to? It was Tampa Bay. It was Baker Mayfield. That's their only loss this season. But you go back to last year, where the Lions got into trouble is when they couldn't run the football and had to throw the football. That is when the Lions are uncomfortable, which is strange based upon how well Jared Goff has played this year. You look at that receiver core. One of the guys that is really undervalued is the wide receiver Patrick from Denver last year. That dude has showed up in replacing Reynolds, who ultimately, for me, leaves a sour taste in my mouth after the San Francisco game. Had some really bad drops in that game. You sit back and you look at what Patrick has been able to rise up and do this year. Him, Amon-Ra, and Jameson Williams all have combined to be exceptional, but let's not get anything twisted. It is Sonic and Knuckles in the backfield that has propelled the Lions to being 11-1. I see that continuing tonight. It's one of those trains that I don't see coming off the rails. Dan Campbell has the guys focused. They're playing extremely well. I think tonight's game is going to be close. I think the Packers are going to come out swinging. It will be a huge test for the Lions. But, we missed a week with Thanksgiving last week. Let me tell you, the Lions getting a win on Thanksgiving changed the rest of the season. It just did. I don't care what anyone said, but to lose to the Bears in that moment on Thanksgiving would have spun the season differently. I think it would have sort of put that false, hope into Detroit in terms of I don't know if we can do this. For them to win that game, I look at tonight against the Packers. If they can pull this one out, they're well on their way to clinching the NFC North, and I would assume well on their way to having home field advantage, which would be huge because the other team they're competing against is Philadelphia. Going into Sunday, taking a look at that, we've got the Jaguars-Titans first up. You look at both teams, I feel awful for Trevor Lawrence. Took a pretty nasty shot, which everyone was calling for the Texans linebackers head on a silver platter. If you want to go look up a clip real quick of a guy that I really think took an even far dirtier hit in terms of helmet to helmet, was a few years ago when Cam Newton was on the Panthers. They're playing the Falcons. Safety comes down here and literally puts the crown of his helmet underneath Cam Newton's chin strap. That dude wasn't suspended for 3 games. It is disproportionate how we are punishing defensive players against specific quarterbacks. Same, like, let's be honest. I know Trevor is out for the rest of the season. I feel awful for him. The linebacker's got a 3-game suspension. If he had done that to Patrick Mahomes, I think he's suspended for the rest of the year. You can argue that till you're blue in the face, but I will stand on that if he had hit a different quarterback doing that, Trevor Lawrence is, yes, one of the bigger names in the NFL, but if he had done that to Patrick Mahomes, not only is he suspended for the rest of the year, he's probably in handcuffs leaving the field. The Jags are going to have Mac Jones battling against the Titans. It's surprising the Jags haven't fired Doug Peterson at this point. I think there's a lot of, how do I want to say, it's good for the Jags to not fire him. I'll put it that way. And the reason I say that is when you look at, especially like Chicago, I know if Pops was here, the question I would ask him, which we've been debating about, and we really haven't come to an answer, is who's Chicago going to hire? You sit back, you have Caleb Williams, first overall pick. You sit back and you go, okay, we need to find an offensive coordinator. We need to bring in someone who can help Caleb propel himself to the level that we hope he can be in the NFL. And it's eerily similar to Jacksonville. You sort of look at how Trevor Lawrence started. You know, you've got Urban Meyer down there. He gets canned. You bring in Doug Peterson. They've had potential the past few years with Doug. I would argue it has steadily declined, but they're not getting the production out of the wide receivers that they got a few years ago. ETN has not played well this year at all. So from a supporting cast standpoint, there are a lot of problems. Has Trevor been a problem? 100%. You can't sit back and look at the offense and say that Trevor has played at the level of a first overall pick in the NFL draft. You think about last year, especially must-win game against Tennessee, put yourself in the playoffs. He's overshooting guys, literally throwing it over guys' heads on 4th down with the game on the line. He hasn't played exceptionally well. I feel bad for him going out. It's a good time for the Jags to reset. They need a lot of help. They traded away Robinson, their left tackle, to the Vikings. You sit back at offensive line, they're going to need help. Defensive side of the football, Josh Allen hasn't performed as well as people hoped with the contract. You sit back, you still have your first overall pick the following year with Walker at defensive tackle, who hasn't played bad. It's just hard for a defensive tackle outside of playing like Aaron Donald, which is a first ballot Hall of Famer, to really have the impact that you're wanting out of a first overall pick. That's why most of the time it's going to go to the position of a quarterback because they touch the ball every time. I just sit back. The Titans have a good defense. I like the Titans in this game. Vegas likes them too. They're -3.5. It would just take a lot for Mac Jones in this offense to go win in Tennessee. Next game up, Jets-Dolphins. I saw a stat that was pretty telling this week about the Jets in terms of how Vegas bets. And so when you sit back, Vegas is not wrong a lot. That's why the Bellagio exists. Those casinos in Vegas did not build themselves. So when you sit back and you start thinking about, well, why is that? How has the level of Vegas betting taken in terms of when you look at the New York Jets? Here's the stat. So the Jets this year are the first team in Super Bowl era to be favored in 9 of their first 12 games. First team to be favored in 9 of their 12 games and end up 3-9 or worse. So they're the first team to be this bad when Vegas thinks they are going to be that good. Meemaw and Pops all had them picked as one of the darlings of the AFC. We had them winning the AFC East, which just got wrapped up last week with the Bills winning that unbelievable game against San Francisco with the lateral from Cooper to Allen. You sit back and you look at the Jets and you go, well, what's the problem? Where are the issues? First and foremost, it's an offensive line. It's offensive line. Does Aaron Rodgers share blame, much like Trevor Lawrence? Absolutely. I'm not going to take anything away or say that Rodgers is not blameless in this. But when you think about what they came into the season with, they went out and got Tyron Smith, who had injury issues with the Cowboys, was on the back, probably a year or two of his career, hasn't lived up to the billet. they haven't been able to establish the run. Is that Breece Hall? Is that an offensive line? It may be a mixture of both, but I would say it's predominantly the offensive line based upon how they looked last year. They didn't just magically get better in one offseason. I think the problems are still there. The Jets, they still have Garrett Wilson. They've got Devontae Adams now. Who knows what they do with Aaron Rodgers? I sit back and I look across the line of scrimmage with the Dolphins. The Dolphins are trying their best to possibly sneak into a wild card game. As crazy as that sounds, the Dolphins would need some things to go right. One of the things to go right is they got to win out. They're sitting at 5-7. For them to finish the season at 10-7, it would give them a good chance in the AFC of securing a wild card. The Dolphins right now are -5.5. I like that out of them. The Jets defense has not been able to stop the run. I look for a big game out of Achane and Raheem Mostert. It's one of those guys that it was hard for him to have the season that he did last year, scoring as many touchdowns, breaking records, to now come into this season and it not feel like a letdown. The Jets have just had a terrible time stopping the run. I look for that to continue this game. I look for the Dolphins to try to establish that early and often, put away the Jets again. The Jets fall to 3-10. Dolphins improved to 6-7. Next game up, you got the Falcons at the Vikings. Right now, Minnesota's -6. You talk about a team that had everything going for it at the beginning of the season. You think about in the NFC South, you had the Saints with Derek Carr. They looked great for 2 games and then absolutely became hot garbage. You had the Panthers, who everyone knew coming into the season was hot garbage. They played like it. And then magically for the last 3 weeks, I know it hasn't equaled wins except for against the Saints. And one other, if we go back 4 weeks, they've had 2 wins, but you look at how they played the Chiefs and then last week how they played, the Panthers could easily in their last 4 games be 4-0. They played exceptionally well. The Buccaneers, you think about if you were to tell a team, hey, they're going to lose Chris Godwin for the year, Mike Evans has been beat up, their defense hasn't played well, everything would point to the Falcons leading the division. The Falcons are sitting there at 6-6, and they look awful. Kirk Cousins threw multiple interceptions last week. I think he threw 3 or 4 in order to lose that game. The Vikings, though, are this team that the Vikings are sitting at 10-2. They were going with the Chiefs. They're 5-0. They lose back-to-back games. People have forgot about them. They're on a 5-game winning streak right now. They're a tough opponent. The Vikings are right there. It comes back to the Detroit tonight against Green Bay. Right now, Detroit is leading the division. They're 3-0. The Vikings are 2-1. So we're just talking, they still have divisional games left to play in the season. This is a good one for the Vikings. I know it's not a divisional opponent, but it is an NFC opponent, so it's going to create those rankings. Atlanta, though, is sitting 6-6, the same with Tampa Bay. You think about how the seasons have gone for both of them. The Falcons are 4-1 in the division. Tampa Bay's 2-2 in the division. So Tampa could make up some ground. They're going to need the Falcons to stumble. I see them getting beat again. The Falcons have not played well on offense. I go back to it just because I can't get over this point enough that the Falcons, when you look at them as a team and you look at why they drafted Penix, it has zero to do with Penix. It really does. It didn't matter the name of the quarterback that they took at that position. They were not in need of a quarterback. And if Cousins is playing this bad and you picked them this high, then he should be playing. You look at how Bo Nix has played. You look at other guys who went behind Penix, and you go, well, why is he not getting the opportunity? The Falcons wasted a draft pick. They could have had someone else, whether it be an offensive lineman, a defensive player, another wide receiver. They had their pick of any defensive player on the board. If you're telling me that Jared Verse couldn't have helped this team right now, you're dead wrong. The Falcons are in this position because they mismanaged their draft capital in the draft. If you love Penix that much, then trade back a few spots. Get another draft pick, stay in the first round, draft him mid-first round, draft him somewhere else. You could have waited. So the Vikings, on the other hand, they've continued to win, and it has been very subtle. No one has been hyping up, the Vikings here lately, which is surprising when you think about how well Sam Darnold has played. He still has this team sitting at 10-2. I get that Josh Allen has played exceptional. Saquon has really played exceptional. Those are the guys that are sort of leading the front for the MVP discussion right now. But Sam Darnold has this team at 10-2. They're 5-1 at home. They're -6. Give me the Vikings. Next game up, New Orleans going to New York to face the Giants. Right now, New Orleans is -4. The Giants are an absolute dumpster fire. When you think about, I talked about the Falcons making poor organizational decisions. You cannot look at a worser team with organizational decisions than the New York Giants. And yeah, that's beating the Panthers. They went out and they paid $160 million to Daniel Jones, who, after paying that deal, you ended up cutting him this year. And now he was still guaranteed $80 million. You paid Daniel Jones $80 million this year to play football. $80 million in a year. And you let your best player on the team, Saquon, go to your division rival in the Eagles, and he's having an MVP caliber year. Would he have had that on the Giants? No. Would Saquon have still been really good? Absolutely. Saquon's going to be Saquon regardless of the team he's on. But the stats have been inflated because he's actually on a good team with the Eagles. He's playing. We see Saquon's true potential when he's actually on a good team. That tells you how good he was on the Giants. He had them winning games. The fact that they cut Daniel Jones and now you're sitting back, I think Malik Neighbors said it best. He was like, it's not a quarterback problem. The guy that we cut is no longer playing, and the guys they have playing look even worse than Daniel Jones. Even worse. The Giants have been a terrible team. On the defensive line, they look fantastic. They have ball players. And then also on the defensive side, think about Xavier McKinney. Safety that you had, you let go. He's with the Packers. He is playing as one of the best safeties in the league right now. Statistically, on paper, he's still playing one of the best in the league. Xavier McKinney, his name is being thrown around as a possible defensive MVP of the league right now for the Defensive Player of the Year. That's how well he's played with Green Bay. Yet again, another team the Giants have another player the Giants have just mismanaged. You think about all the decisions the Giants have made from an organizational standpoint. I'm sorry, Giants fans. You're looking at another 5 to 7 years of the pit of misery. Give me New Orleans. They're -4. I like them on the road. As bad as New Orleans has been and wishy-washy, I'll take New Orleans against the Giants any day. Next game up, Panthers-Eagles. Like I said, Philly is -13. -13. It is difficult for a team, when you sit back and think about it, to be a double-digit favorite in the NFL. Yes, the 2 wins for the Panthers came against the Saints 23-22, against the Giants 20-17. They lose to the Chiefs 30-27. They lose to the Bucs 26-23. I get that the Eagles are playing very, very good football. They're being overshadowed in the NFC by the Lions, but the Eagles are right there. They're 10-2 as well. They are playing very, very well. They have Saquon. And they don't even have Devontae Smith right now. He's been out for the past 2 games with an injury. They have looked very good on offense. Do I expect the Panthers to win? No. Do I expect them to keep it closer than 13? Yes. I think the Panthers are finding their way with Bryce Young. You look at last week, Adam Thielen caught that pass. If that had been ruled a touchdown, the Panthers are going to win that game. The Panthers and Bryce Young, they've started to figure it out on offense. They've been able to protect Bryce. They've been able to run the ball with Chuba Hubbard. Chuba has been the savior of the Panthers because they've been able to establish a run and take some of that pressure off of the passing game. They're going against a huge test with the Eagles. Both of the Eagles players that they picked with Mitchell and Coop have played exceptional at the position of corner. The Eagles won the draft at the position of corner with both of those guys. They have played very, very well. I like the Eagles in the game. I don't like them to cover just because it's minus 13. That's a difficult thing to cover, especially when you get up. Most of the time you pull your foot off, especially against a bad team. I like the Eagles, but I don't like them to cover in this game. Next game up, we get the Browns at the Steelers. A few weeks ago, we get the snow game in Cleveland. Awesome. Get even better speeches from Jameis Winston during that game. Pittsburgh's minus 6.5. I like Pittsburgh in this game. I don't like the Browns just because it's going to be difficult to go to Pittsburgh and do what you did in Cleveland again. Jameis has played well. Jameis also threw 2 pick sixes and almost a third against Denver. We knew this about Jameis. Like when you go back to him under Bruce Arians in Tampa Bay, he can sling it. He'll throw it with the best of them. Jameis has a great arm. There's a reason he was the first overall pick. Jameis also has been very, very prone to interceptions. It's part of it. The snow is going to take, as a quarterback, you love it in the snow. Why? Guys lose traction on their feet. They're not as reactive to the football. You can get away with a lot more in the snow as a quarterback because if you just put it on the guy, the defensive guy really has a problem with his footing of getting there and making a play. As long as that weather is not bad, I like Pittsburgh in the game. Pittsburgh's sitting at 9-3. Pittsburgh really needs this game in order to really gain control of the division. You sit back and you look at them in the division. Pittsburgh's 2-1. You got the Ravens at 2-2, Cincy at 1-3. The Browns are at 2-1. So yes, in terms of the divisional rankings, based upon the wins and losses, they're at a lower percentage. Cleveland controls their own destiny if they can win out in the division. Do I think that happens? No. But they have the players. But for Pittsburgh, I like Pittsburgh in the game. I like them at home. It's hard to pick them, especially after they saw what happened the first time they played the Browns. Give me the Steelers to cover 6.5. Next game up, Raiders Bucks. Tampa Bay's minus 6.5. This is going to come down to can Aiden O'Connell replicate what they did against the Chiefs. The Raiders had that game against Kansas City. They had it. I'm 100% in the Raiders' corner that when that ref ran in with a false start signal and then they changed it, there's no way for the NFL, the NFL really needs to start caring about perception more. You can't, with all the stuff that's going on in terms of, the Chiefs are getting all these great calls. When that happened, you have to sit back and imagine someone in the NFL office is like, please call this a false start. Like, if Kansas City wins, Kansas City wins. But to change it and be like, it was an illegal motion, we shouldn't have blown the whistle, but still it's Kansas City's ball, that rubs fans the wrong way. It's not a great look for the sport. NFL referees have really, and even college, have made some calls this year that you just sort of sit back and you go, well, where is the accountability for NFL referees? Where's the lost paycheck? You got the Texans guy who puts Trevor Lawrence out of the game. He gets suspended for 3 games. But when the refs change a call that leads directly to an outcome changing of the game, there's no penalty. You got a problem with me. Can the Raiders replicate against that against the Bucs? Absolutely. The Buccaneers defense has been at best average, but I would almost say that they are a liability. The Bucs getting Mike Evans back is huge. Mike, he's done it for the past, I think, 13 seasons now, had 1,000-yard seasons. He's an unstoppable force. Teams know that they have to stop Mike. Guys can't stop him. If the Raiders can keep up in the score, I'm not going to say that they're going to shut down Baker. Baker has played exceptionally well this year. The only chance the Raiders have is to make it a shootout and keep putting up points. That's the Raiders' best defense is their offense. I just don't see it. They have played better. Jacoby Myers has looked like Jerry Rice coming back in a Raiders uniform since Devontae left. However, it's just not something that I sit back and think the Raiders can overcome. Give me the Bucs minus 6.5. Next game, NFC West. Yet again, this division that no one really wants to win. You got Seahawks Cardinals, which Arizona right now is minus 2.5. You sit back and you look at the NFC West division and you go, I don't know who wants to win it. You got in terms of win-losses, Seattle sitting there at 7-5. Cardinals are 6-6. The Rams are 6-6, and the Niners are 5-7. Niners lose Christian McCaffrey most likely for the year. They can't get off the injury train. It looks like it's going to put the Niners not just out of Super Bowl contention, but out of playoff contention. In the division, Seahawks are 2-2. Cardinals are 2-1. Rams are 2-1. The Niners are 1-3. 1-3. I don't see a scenario in which the Niners come back and win this division or get to the playoffs. It's really coming down to which teams in that division are going to win out. I'm going to stick with the pick that I made in the preseason of the Rams. I like McVay with Stafford and Puka and Cooper. Those are the guys that I just sit back and I go, that's the team that's hard to bet against. The Seahawks, however, have looked really good with Geno. You look at Ryan Grubb coming in from Washington Huskies last year, taking over the offensive coordinator. They have been putting up points. Jackson Smith and Jigba has been really playing out of his mind the last few weeks. You haven't heard as much from Metcalf. They have the receiving core of the Eagles in Seattle. It's just a matter of can they utilize it. You still have Kenneth Walker. Arizona's minus 2.5. Anytime these teams play against one another, it's just a great football game. For me, you can coin toss this game in terms of a winner. Really could. I would sit back and if you put money on it, I would say Seattle. I like their offense more than I like Arizona's offense. But honestly, you could flip a coin and you could probably be more right. It's just one of those games that every time these opponents play in the NFC West, it's really dealer's choice. Sunday afternoon game, big one. Buffalo at LA. This is what I'm talking about in terms of just beating a good team. The Bills, I get the Rams are 6-6. It's still Matt Stafford. For the Bills to come in, their defense is going to be tested this game against Stafford and Kyron Williams. The Bills' rushing defense has not been good this year. They have given up some of the worst yards to running backs in the NFL this year. They have one of the worst rushing defenses in the league. That's how the Rams are going to attack them. They're going to attack them with a run, spread them out, really try. If somebody's going to orchestrate a good win, it's going to be Matt Stafford. We will see how that works against Buffalo. Buffalo's coming off a huge win, clinching the division against the Niners. We'll see how they prepare this week. Buffalo's minus 3.5. It would not shock me for the Rams to win this game. It would not shock me in the least. I think the Rams keep it closer than 3.5, if not flat outright win in this game. I love Buffalo. I think they're doing fantastic. I really like for them to possibly get the number 1 seed in the AFC. It's just a matter of can, down the stretch, they continue to win. They need a little bit more health on the wide receiver side. Keon Coleman was out this past week. They got Cooper back. He played very, very well, especially with that option back to Josh Allen. We'll see how they play. I think it's going to be the game of the week. Next game, if Pops was here, it'd be a little bit of sadness. You got the Bears at 4-8 going to the Niners 5-7. The Bears absolutely threw away that game against the Lions there at the end. I'm not saying they would have won, but the fact that they left a timeout in their pocket with 30 seconds to go in the game, and that was the best thing that you could have possibly done, was horrendous. Now, that is why, in my opinion, Eberflus was fired. It wasn't about the fact that you didn't use the timeout. It was that when you were asked about it after, could you have done anything better? When he said no, he was literally chiseling out his name on his tombstone. It was the worst response for a head coach. You could not have looked any poorer in front of the media than to deny all responsibility for how that game ended. You could have given your team a chance to call the timeout, try to pick up some sideline throws, if not hit one over the middle with 30 seconds left. If you hit a 15, 20-yard pass over the middle, you're going to be able to, in most scenarios, to get set and, spike the football to give yourselves an opportunity at tying the game with a field goal and going to overtime. Instead, they took the long shot to Romaduz, and it failed. It failed. The Bears have been on an absolute skid the past 5 weeks. They're going against the Niners team who is beat up. Caleb has been playing very well the last few weeks. I'd like to see that continue against a Niners defense that I think is still a good defense. Fred Warner is playing still at an MVP level for a middle linebacker. He's one of the best in the league. The Niners offense, however, is hurt. You still have Debo, you still have Purdy, you still have Kittle, but both Mason and Christian McCaffrey are going to the IR. You got Ayuk on the IR from a few weeks ago. I don't know how the Niners really come and attack the Bears. The Bears have a really good defense. San Francisco's -4. I look for the Bears to break their streak of losing. I like the Bears in the game just because of all the injuries for the 49ers, and they're having to go against a good defense. Give me Chicago in the wake of firing Eberflus to have a bounce-back game. Sunday night, Chargers at Chiefs. Kansas City's -4. I've been on the Charger bandwagon. I've been there. They are out, however, with J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins went to the IR. This Chargers team has not looked as efficient with Herbert throwing the football as I thought that they would. They have established the run game. They have played well and played good teams close. You can't sit back and say the Chargers have been getting blown out of games like they have for the past few years. Harbaugh has them coached up well. They are a disciplined football team. But the way that I would sum up the Chargers is that the Chargers have to come in and play an A game and have the Chiefs not play an A game for them to win the game. If the Chargers, the Chargers are just missing pieces. If the Chiefs come out and play an A game, the Chargers will lose, regardless of how well the Chargers play. The Chargers have to play their best and hope that a good team doesn't play their best for them to get a win. I still like the Chargers to sneak into the playoffs for the AFC. The Chargers are going to be the team to challenge Mahomes over the next few years for dominancy in the AFC. Harbaugh will get them right. I guarantee you they continue to make good decisions in the draft like they did this last year with Joe Alt and Ladd McConkey, 2 great steals. I look for them to continue that. It's just a matter of, for this year, they need good teams they play against to not have good games, because if they can't make it up, they don't have all the pieces right now to make it, and it doesn't help. Just like against his brother and the Ravens, the Chargers had opportunities to win that game. They had great opportunities, but when you throw it and Quentin Johnston is dropping footballs, like, it just kills your team. That's where I'm talking about, where the Chargers have to play a game. They couldn't make up for the mistakes that they cost themselves with. They're just not that deep in depth on the offensive and defensive sides of the football to be able to control the games from either side. They really have to play well to win. I like the Chiefs -4. I think it's a close game. I think it's closer than 4. I'm surprised the game's not like a -2.5 for Kansas City. I like the Chargers to cover, but I like the Chiefs outright. Then Monday night, we got Cincinnati versus Dallas. Dallas has looked better. I get that they played Dallas this week. I want to pull out this stat that Maul sent out to the guys in our chat. Seasons, a quarterback has had 30-plus passing touchdowns and 5 or fewer interceptions through the first 12 games. So in 2007, Tom Brady did this. His win-loss record, 12-0. Aaron Rodgers did this in 2011. His win-loss record, 12-0. Aaron Rodgers did it in 2014. He was 9-3. Drew Brees in 2018 did it. He was 10-2. Patrick Mahomes did it in 2020, 11-1. Aaron Rodgers also did it in 2020, 9-3. Joe Burrow this year, 30-plus touchdown passes, 5 or fewer interceptions. He's 4-8. 4-8. And if you've watched the Bengals this year, their offense is there. Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase have been playing lights out. Lights out. Their defense and other just decisions made by coaching throughout this season has led to them being 4-8. The Bengals still have a chance. They could win out, be sitting there at 9-8 and have a chance. It's a slim chance, but they have a chance. The issue is their defense has not risen to the occasion. The offense, you sit back and you think about another thing about the offense, I get that Burrow has been exceptional. The lack of a running game, Mixon's departure really hurt this team. The inability to chew clock but still put up points with a running back has hurt the Bengals this year. They're going against a Cowboys team that they should win. Cincy's minus 5.5. Dallas has gotten back Micah Parsons. Their defensive line has been wreaking havoc on teams. I get it was against the Giants last week. That's not much to be said. And then the week prior, they did look good against the Commanders and ended up winning 34-26. The Cowboys the past 2 weeks have shown the ability to stay in some games. I like Cincinnati, though. Joe Burrow and that offense is too much. I get that Dallas has looked better the past 2 weeks. I just like Cincy, but I do like Dallas to cover that 5.5. I think it'll be a closer game, but give me Cincinnati outright in that game. That being said, that does wrap up Week 14 of the NFL. Try to make it a quick one for you guys. Go through each of the games. I do appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll get all the boys back together for the next week. But until then, time to pull chalks. Thanks for guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week.